The story of labour legislation is one written in blood. The cynic in me would say that more often than not we're inclined to continue things as they are unless forced otherwise by some great tragedy, that it's in our human nature to exploit until public outcry or the threat of law forces otherwise. This is part one of a two-part series in which we're going to examine industrial disasters which changed our labour legislation. So join me as we look at this part of Yorkshire's hidden history. We're in the village of Silkstone in Barnsley. The mines had been closed for 4 days to celebrate the coronation of Queen Victoria, though the workers hadn't been paid for this time off. They returned to work on the 4th of July. Almost 80 miners worked here and at Moor End, with over 100 children working in both mines. The main jobs for children were as hurriers and trappers. Hurriers would transport the freshly dug coal in baskets or carts, whilst trappers, often much younger, would sit alone in the dark tunnels, opening and closing trapdoors to allow the hurriers and air to go through. Around 80 people were working underground on the 4th of July. In the early afternoon, a terrible storm raged, damaging local property and flooding rivers. Concerned, preparations were made to evacuate the mine shaft. However, the engine used to lift men out of the mine was flooded, and so they'd have to be lifted out manually. This naturally caused many of the children to panic, and despite an adult named William Lamb telling them to stay with everyone else, around 40, including his own 8-year-old son, decided to make their own way out via a day hole. This was an old tunnel which was no longer used, but which came out at the surface. However, unbeknownst to them, a small stream had flooded near the entrance to the hole, and as they crawled up the tunnel they encountered the water. It pinned them against a trapdoor which they couldn't open, and 26 children, all aged between 7 and 17, drowned, including William's 8-year-old son. 14 managed to survive by crawling into a slit in the rock which protected them from the water. Afterwards, many miners would testify that had the children stayed with everyone else, they would have survived, as the water didn't reach them. The bodies were carried out and an inquest held the same day here at the Red Lion pub. The jury ruled an accidental death by drowning. This shocked the nation. Queen Victoria demanded an inquest and commissioners were sent into Silkstone and neighbouring communities to investigate conditions. There is a striking disparity between the responses recorded of the adults involved in the workings of the mine and the children who actually worked in it. For example, a Benjamin Mello said, "I do not think that children suffer from their work. I do not think it at all objectionable on account of morals. I have at present 2 daughters of my own who work at the top of the pit, and I have no objection to their working in it. The education of the children is pretty good." Well, contrary to what Benjamin might have thought, the children obviously did suffer from it. Anne Egley, who was 18 at the time of the interview, said that "the work is far too hard for me. The sweat runs off me all over sometimes. I'm very tired at night. Sometimes when we get home at night we have not power to wash us and then we go to bed. Sometimes we fall asleep in the chair. Father said last night it was both a shame and a disgrace that girls should work as we do, but there was naught else for us to do. I begun to hurry when I was 7 years old and have been hurrying ever since. I have been 11 years in this pit. The girls are always very tired. We do not always get enough to eat or drink, but we do get a good supper. I'm quite sure that we work constantly 12 hours except Sundays." In addition, a commissioner who inspected the local schools found that on average children only attended school for between 2 and 5 years. In one school of 50 pupils, only 21 could read fairly and only 14 could write fairly. Anne Egley also said that, "I have never learnt to read. I don't know my letters. I never learnt naught." Robert Clark, the mine owner, said that "their health is very good. I don't know of a place where there is less ill health." Well, naturally the evidence collected by the commission suggested otherwise. A 13-year-old is recorded as sadly deformed in spine and shoulder, a 14-year-old is emaciated, and another 14-year-old has his spinal column curved in by half an inch at least. It may be easy to think, well, this was all normal in the Victorian times, so they didn't really think that it was bad, but the fact that it caused such an uproar demonstrates a moral awareness that it was bad. Lord Ashley, who spearheaded the inquest, said in a speech to the House of Commons that "It is not possible for any man, whatever be his station, if he have but a heart within his bosom, to read the details of this awful document without a combined feeling of shame, terror, and indignation. We must address ourselves to the evil boldly and faithfully, or it will soon acquire so enormous a magnitude as to be insuperable by any effort either of genius or principle." The commission ended up as the basis for the 1842 Mines and Collieries Act, which banned women and children from working underground and boys under the age of 10. Though it was quite a small step and there was still a long way to go, it was a huge moment in labour legislation. It demonstrated the moral imperative that many Victorians felt in improving the quality of life of workers, but also the tragic events necessary for people to wake up and finally take notice. Let us end now by examining the memorial to the victims erected shortly after the event and the later memorial inside the church.